All right. I'm at the Red House with Justin Webster, the executive chef and owner of Heff's Burger Club. I almost said Burger Bar, but it is Burger Club. Thanks for making it over.
Of course. Thanks for having me, man.
I'm excited to talk about whatever we talk about.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm really glad. I'm glad and I'm not that. I think if you had existed, if Heff's had existed when I worked on 4th Street, I would have lost all my money. Going there. I would have gone there every single day. I really like what y'all are doing. Where did this concept start?
It's kind of funny. Heff started by accident. I was the head chef over at Cranky's for about 2 years, doing a lot of cool stuff there with my crew. There towards the end of my stay, we started hosting pop-ups. And there was one night where we were supposed to have a burger pop-up come. They had to cancel last minute. I think there was like a family emergency or something like that. People were clamoring for burgers, so I was like, I got some beef. I know how to make burgers. So rolled up my Blackstone out there, and it sold out in like 30 minutes. So the ownership there was like, you've got to do this again. That was awesome. So I did it about 2 more times. Same thing, sold out very quickly. And I was like, wait a minute, this might have some legs. An investor came out just by chance, came out and tasted the burger, and he was like, dude, we've got to do something together. And yeah, Heff's was born.
Did you know, like, when you started conceptualizing what Heff's would be, how much of it was already there in your mind? Like, how much of it did you, like, what Heff's turned out to be, the colors and the vibe, like, was that quick, or was that a slow process?
I think, so I'd always kind of had an idea. I didn't know what kind of restaurant I was going to open, but I knew the general vibe was going to be this kind of 90s kid nostalgia kind of vibe. I wanted to do something cool in Winston that hadn't really been done before. As much as I love Winston, and Winston is my hometown, for a long time it's been kind of a meat and potatoes town. Yeah. So I was like, man, we need to do something cool and punk and unapologetic. And so I was like, whatever I do, it's gonna be like that. And then when I first did the burger pop-ups, I was like, all right, let's like really trim the fat and nail this down into like a solid concept. So I was like, what's kind of nostalgic for me? What's kind of reminiscent of my childhood? So I started thinking about, man, my favorite thing to do was like go to Burger King or McDonald's when I was a kid. That was a treat. Like, we never got to go. And I remember getting my first Whopper, and I was like, I felt like an adult. And I was like, when you're a kid with that nostalgia filter, it's like, man, this is the best thing I've ever had. You eat a Whopper now and it's trash, but I want it to kind of capture what it tasted like to me when I was a kid. Yeah. So I got hooked up with Joyce Farms, which they're my bros. You can drive 15 minutes down the road and see the cows that are in Heff's Burgers. So I was like, I'm a chef now. I come from fine dining. Let me elevate a burger to the max, but still make it approachable. You can walk in flip-flops and get this like farm to table burger, no judgment. And our motto, fine food, no fuss. You know what I mean? You get good food, good farm to table burgers, but we're trashy as can be. So
I love it.
Yeah.
It's fantastic.
Yeah.
So, okay. So like, this is one of those areas where, it's easy to overlook the fact that when you're talking to a chef, like a real chef, you're talking to an artist, and they're not often considered. I think they are when people think about it, but when people think about an arts community in a downtown like Winston-Salem, they think of the painters, they think of the galleries and the sculptors and the musicians, and they think of, I think I'm guilty of, I think I know of other people who categorize the artist chef in like a different category than the rest of the arts. But I mean, I imagine it's an extremely creative and like presently minded sort of process of being that person.
Absolutely. When you're doing menu crafting, or when you're trying to make a new dish or make a new burger or make a new sandwich, you're really thinking about every component. When you become a chef, you know that there's 3 things that you control: salt, fat, and heat. And within those kind of confines, you can break all the rules. You can make really interesting things. For example, our flagship burger, the Lady Killer, the one that's kind of based off the Whopper, we were trying to find the perfect sauce. We went through so many iterations of that sauce. And then I had this ingredient that I'd been working with a lot at that time. It was black garlic, which is dehydrated, fermented garlic. And I was like, man, what if we made a sauce with black garlic? And so we started doing it. We played with a bunch of different recipes, and we landed on this kind of Russian dressing, black garlic hybrid, which is now our you know, our most popular sauce. But I mean, that was trial and trial and trial, and we were like finding balance and finding the perfect combination of things to make this burger. So it is an art form, you know what I mean? You're really putting your heart and your soul and all your creativity into making these dishes that represent you.
Yeah. And then you're now in a position where you get to do that as well with like a whole space.
Absolutely.
Like, as you've done. And, you know, so the first time I went to Heff's was kind of a funny story to me. So I've been experimenting with different diet stuff.
Yeah.
And that week it was just so funny. That week I was dying. I was experimenting with just cutting carbs out of my life altogether. And a buddy of mine and I went off to like check out Hudson Hill that day.
Yeah.
We were coming back into Winston, and we'd gone by fancy groceries, and finally we were like, well, we're down here. Like, let's go get some dinner. And I've been wanting to go to Heff's for a while. And I was like, am I going to do it? I think today could be a cheat day.
Yeah.
And I went, and it was like so fucking good that I gave up on that whole diet, because it was just like, I'm not doing this shit. I'm tired of not having carbs in my life.
Yeah.
But yeah, so my experience there, and that I feel like the experience of like finally getting carbs again also really added to my appreciation for the colors and for that like sort of whatever I can't think what you call, but that machine you have over to the side that's like all that. So anyway, now that you're the owner of this place, you get to kind of expand that, extend that artistic expression into a whole space, which I imagine is pretty fun.
It's awesome, man. The story of how Heff's looks is awesome. Me and my partner, the mother of my child, Heff, Heather, Heff is her nickname. We co-parent our child together, and she's still my best friend in the world. So we were like, let's do this together. She's I would say an amateur interior designer, but she's just so good at design and stuff like that. So the color scheme, the kind of general vibe was her idea, and then I just came up with like, let's get the wackiest, scariest street art that we can, just like the craziest looking stuff. And it came out looking like a Fever Dream arcade, but you know what I mean? It's awesome, man. I love it. You know, we play anime on the TVs. We've got a vending machine that sells sage and CBD joints. And I'm like, this is sick, man.
That's the word I was looking for, vending machine. Yeah. That's what, I guess, is that your vibe in general? Is just kind of a wacky, crazy, arcade, chaotic, like include everything kind of vibes?
I read a review yesterday on Yelp that described us, I think, perfectly. It was hilarious, and I try not to look at Yelp, but it was like, it's a weird vibe. It's like a hippie punk desert vibe. And I was like, yeah, sure. You know what I mean? I like weird stuff, man. I like eye-catching stuff. A lot of our recent art has come from just street artists, you know, people that are selling stuff on the street. We got two really scary kind of like chalk drawn clown pictures, and I was like, man, that fits. And then we got a portrait of what looks like a country singer in the middle of our wall, and it's cool, man. Got a stop sign with Mario spray painted on it. So the weirder the better, man. If it fits our vibe, I'm into it.
Yeah. Oh shit, what was I about to ask you? Oh shit. This is what it was. Okay, I hear you. The word club, I'm curious about that. There's something extremely, I feel like, satisfying and alluring about the selection of that word. Where was the inspiration for that, I guess?
I think burger bar, man, it's such a played out phrase to me. Whenever I think about burger bar, I think about just the worst gentrified burger place you can, you know, people with curly mustaches and riding penny farthings and stuff like that. You know what I mean? Just the worst. Club is cool, man, because it's like, hey, we're doing our thing. If you want to come here and be part of the club, that's what you can do. So it was like, we're inclusive, but if you don't like our vibe, you can go somewhere else. And so I think just phonetically sounds better.
It does.
Yeah.
I don't know what it is about the word club these days, but they're like, maybe it's just like the lack of social sort of institutions that we sort of love in the way that we used to love social institutions or something. There's something about that, again, that is just really satisfying, that like is very, I don't know, it really adds to, I don't know, something like the feeling of I don't know, it adds to the desire to want to go there or something, to like be a part of this family that I guess you've probably built a little bit.
Absolutely. Yeah, man. I think when we were coming up with it, we were like, we're gonna be like I said this to you before the podcast. Our goal was to be authentically ourselves. Always use our voice. Never cater to anybody. If you look on some of my posts, I'll be like, "Hey, idiots, come get this burger," and it's we're just poking fun and having fun. But we're always going to be ourselves. We're always going to have art that might offend some people. I got a picture of Jesus on the wall that says "Don't be a dick," and some people are like, they come in and they're like, "Nope, not for me." But the people that there's a lot of people that come in and they're looking for a new experience and they're like, "Hey, man, this is dope." So always going to be ourselves.
Has that always been a value, a North Star for you?
I think so. I've worked in the service industry since I was 19, 20. I grew up in the service industry. Just my stepdad was a chef, so I grew up sitting in his office or sitting at the bar eating a burger while he cooks. You know what I mean? And he kind of ran the house like a restaurant. So I've had knife skills since I was 11. So I kind of grew up just living and breathing the industry. And as I worked in places, I realized there was like this pretense or pageantry associated, especially with fine dining. The customer was always like, we were the servants, the customer was king. And I was like, man, when I open a restaurant, it's not going to be like that. You know what I mean? We're going to put out good food because we have integrity. But at the end of the day, I care more about my workers. I don't know if it's like my left-leaning politics or if it's my value of the worker, but at the end of the day, it's like, you can come and have a cool experience, but if you're a dick, I'm kicking you out. You know what I mean? It's like, and some people hate that. Some people want to go to a place and be waited on and stuff like that. But I mean, you're coming there for food, and if you're cool, we're going to be so nice to you, give you the best experience possible. But yeah, just getting rid of that pageantry, which is where our motto, fine food, no fuss, comes from, because we're not giving you any fuss.
I hear that completely.
Yeah.
And there's something I love about the downtown community is there's a lot more of that. And I think when I worked downtown more, it wasn't like a fuck the customer attitude, but it was like, we don't really do the whole customer's always right thing. Like it's a bit of a negotiation, and we're not gonna, I've had so many wacky experiences of people just people will say some outlandish shit just to try to, express that sense of superiority over the people that are working in service. And it's like, man, that's just not going to fly in a community like this. And I love that. I prefer places that kind of have that edge to them for sure. Yeah. I don't like stale corporate ass environments where people act like I don't know, better than I am. Yeah. kind of thing.
I mean, it's mutual respect. I can't go do someone's finances and you can't come back here and cook a burger. You know what I mean? So it's like, I'm not going to bow down to some suits that come in. I'll always respect you as long as you're giving respect. I mean, but my biggest thing is if you're rude to my staff, I do not need your business. I will kick you out with a smile on my face. And it's not that we're mean. Sometimes we'll get reviews that are, it's like, they didn't even bring the food to my table. And we're like, oh, it's counter service. You know what I mean? It's like, you don't go into McDonald's and sit at a table and wait for them to bring, it's old school diner style, like call your name out with a megaphone. Yep. Use a megaphone to be as obnoxious as possible and we call it your food. And it's great food. And if you come in with a good attitude, you'll have a wonderful time.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. All right. So when did it occur to you that you enjoyed cooking?
So I cooked from the time I was young because it was kind of like something I was good at, something I was natural at, something I was accustomed to. But it was always like I was cooking and I was like, what do I want to do when I grow up? Because I've always been very creative. I would draw, paint, worked on furniture for a long time. And I had this urge to be creative. And then I realized I was like, hey man, I've got this opportunity to be creative right here. And that's when I started really getting into some of the greats, Marco Pierre White, just Jacques Pepin, all these awesome Alain Leno, all these amazing older chefs, and just seeing the mentality behind them crafting dishes and stuff like that, and being like, wow, this is an art form. This is a way to be expressive. This isn't just line cooking, short order cooking. You know what I mean? I could really do something with this. So my initial kind of love was fine dining. I was like, I'm gonna do fine dining, but then I realized from fine dining that the people that work in fine dining and really put their hearts into it, they're sacrificing their mental and physical health to work in fine dining. It's a very brutal environment to work in. a lot of the times you're getting in there super early, prepping your fingers to the bone, working with chefs that are very intense and very cold. And I was like, man, I'm not like that. You know what I mean? I'm not that kind of cold-hearted chef. I want to have these deep kind of personal relationships with the people that cook for me because I want them to be better than me eventually. So I was like, when I open a restaurant, it's going to be fast casual. You know what I mean? And I'm going to give people an opportunity to learn. I want my space to be like a learning environment. So that was always my goal.
Okay. So for somebody like me, like if we were talking about musicians or songwriters or maybe even filmmakers to an extent, I could probably express some opinions I had about like how to describe the essence of what made certain people great.
Yeah.
With food, I mean, you already hinted on this a little with salt, heat, and I forget the other thing you mentioned. Salt, heat,
fat, and acidity. Acidity is like the one thing you can really control.
So those components, I imagine, you take those components, you add creativity, you add things that maybe people wouldn't think of combining in a flavor profile or different things like that. Sure. But some of these chefs that you mentioned, I wonder if you could like give somebody like me, a layman in this field, an idea of maybe like what is it about different chefs that there might be to appreciate as fully as like somebody like you who really knows what these guys did in that art form.
Sure. And I think I'll reference modern chefs because I think there's some really great people working now. I get inspired by all kinds of chefs cooking all different sorts of food. Right now, my favorite chef is Mashima Bailey. She owns The Gray down in Savannah. And it's this old kind of restored, like a rebuilt Greyhound station. And she makes Southern food using her traditional African roots. And it's so well thought out and it's so unapologetically her on that plate. And I'm like, man, that's awesome. She has a book out called Black, White, and the Gray, which is one of the best cooking books I've ever read. It's not a cookbook, but it's biographical. And I'm like, man, I really feel where you're coming from. And it's a different experience than I've had in life. And it's like, you can see how her unique experience plays out on her plates and stuff like that. And then you have people like, people I look up to like Mason Hereford, who's kind of this cool stoner rollerblader guy out in New Orleans that owns Turkey and the Wolf. And he just does cool fried bologna sandwiches and puts them on old collectible McDonald's plates. And, they smoke weed, wear Grateful Dead shirts. And I find inspiration from that. Edward Lee out in Kansas City does old Southern recipes, but uses, his Korean culture and incorporates like Korean ingredients into like, you do like old Southern fried chicken with some kimchi on the side. And I'm like, oh man, that's so cool. It's done doing fusion the right way. So I respect people's stories coming out in their plates and their food. You know what I mean? You can really get a good idea of who a chef is by the food they produce. And you can feel their culture in the food. And that's the chefs I love.
Man, I love that. I mean, that's that's exactly the same thing that we do with music, the same thing that we do with film, with writing fiction. Like that's the art. That's the artist, is to kind of capture the symbolic representation of one's life or person through sort of a craft.
Yeah.
So what can that tell us, I guess, about like potentially, what might that potentially tell us about Heff's and like about you as the artist that's kind of putting these plates out to people? I'm getting hints of this. I'm getting hints of things that you've already talked about, but ideally, like what might a plate from Heff's like tell somebody about you, I guess?
I think between the food and the ambiance, I'm a 90s kid. You know what I mean? I'm a weird, all over the place punk kid. I love anime. I love the music we play. You're gonna hear Fugazi. You're gonna hear Rancid. You're gonna hear Doja Cat. You know what I mean? You're gonna hear all kinds of shit that we play, man. And you go into another restaurant in town. They're playing Imagine Dragons radio constantly, and I'm like, top 40 hits, man. It's like, no, that's us, man. So our music taste is kind of in there. Our artistic taste is in there. Our nerdiness is in there. And like I said, every burger is this nostalgia burger. The Piggy Wiggy, which is like our bacon burger, it's a Baconator, man. It's a Baconator done up, but that's what it is. And then I have some like family recipes. My family's from Virginia. They're from the Blue Ridge, like deep in the Blue Ridge. So a lot of the times I'll use my grandma's fried green tomatoes. My granny's coleslaw is on one of the burgers. Firecracker slaw. She used to blend up jalapenos and put it in her slaw. So it's like a traditional slaw, but just like a little spicier. My grandpa's pimento cheese, which I'll never give the recipe to anybody. But yeah, man. So there's a lot of me in there. You know, a lot of my Southern upbringing, and then a lot of my like 90s kids meal, like Hot Wheels race car youth, man, you know, Nintendo 64 kind of upbringing. You know, I grew up in the 90s, and it was like everything was big and colorful, and it's probably, looking back, probably just consumerism, but I look back on that with like these like rose tinted glasses. I'm like, man, that's awesome. You know, so you can see a lot of that. There was a time where I wanted to do a kids meal at Heff's, and I still might do it, where we give away like old Beanie Babies or like old 90s toys. I'm like, God, that'd be so sick, dude. Yeah.
That would be awesome. Yeah. What year were you born?
I'm 91.
91. Okay. Yeah. I'm 89. We're not far apart. Probably had a very similar tapestry growing up. Yeah. The Beanie Babies might be the most memorable. That and the 101 Dalmatians, I think, are the most memorable kids meal toys that come to mind for me.
Yeah. I remember seeing Hercules, the Disney Hercules, in theaters, and they had this set of like 14 figures. You know, you had like the Titans, you had Hercules, you had Phil, and I was like, man, I kept going back and back just to get these toys, because like I wanted to have. For some reason, I was obsessed with having all of these Hercules toys. But that's like one of my earliest memories is like going to McDonald's to get all these figures. And then, I mean, you look at our vending machine, we also sell Pokemon cards. That was, you remember, that was a huge part of our lives, you know, was Pokemon cards. So I think the best chefs bring in memories from their childhood, and that's just what I'm doing.
Yeah, I love that, man. Yeah. And it's interesting too. Like, it's interesting. Sometimes you, pretty much until very recently. I mean, I just recently kind of started just being way more mindful of trying to, like I said, I've been experimenting with diet for a while. And prior to that, as much as like people like to pretend they don't, I would eat fast food, especially on the road, like a lot. And there was always this thing that was like, man, I love that it's delicious and that it's familiar, and like I can kind of predict what it tastes like, but I hate thinking of it as cheap. I hate thinking of just like, oh, I'm going to buy the cheapest, fastest thing, because in my mind, I know that that's probably not like the best habit to form when it comes to eating food. And I kind of love that what you've done is taken the inspiration from like favorites from the fast food experience and made them like kind of better quality and locally sourced and stuff.
Absolutely. Yeah, man. And I was like, I always loved the idea of farm to table, but when you're doing fine dining, it's very expensive to do that. So I was like, all right, let's build this burger from the ground up. Beef, Joyce Farms, I already know that. And then we shopped around for buns. We're like, no one can give us the quantity of buns that we want. Some of my best friends in town, or some of my really good chef friends in town, John Bobby, amazing. That's who I initially wanted to use for the buns, but he's like, hey man, I cannot make you that many buns a week. We just don't have the facility for it. And I was like, I totally understand. So I looked around, and then someone told me about Annie's Bakery up in Asheville, and they're, you know, kind of like a mid-sized bakery, and they're pumping stuff out, and went up there to get, you know, to taste some buns, got in contact with them. The best burger buns I've ever had in my life. And I was like, this is awesome, you know? And then I got with my friend Nikki Farrington, who she's the chef over at Six and Vine. She owns Nikki's Pickles. There's a warehouse up in Pilot Mountain, and she makes, again, the best pickles I've ever had in my life. And I'm like, okay, here we go. And then we get our little produce, our onions, our lettuce from local distributors, and there it is. It's the burger, you know?
Love it.
I think the only thing that isn't from North Carolina is the cheese. You know, it's American cheese, so, you know.
Yeah.
But yeah, man, it's North Carolina between two buns. Yeah.
That is just badass. Yeah. That's awesome. What is that the place where you get beef? Is that in Pofftown?
That's out in Clemens.
Clemens, okay. Yeah. I went out to visit. Who was it? I think it was somebody who either was a chef involved with Hutch and Harris or Jeffrey Adams, or I don't remember exactly where, but I went and visited a farm out like right down the road from here, where a bunch of chickens and pigs and stuff are, and it's just cool to see that downtown Winston-Salem, like there's these chefs that really give a shit about that stuff and about sourcing things from real farms and stuff, where animals, like you said, you can like see the conditions that the animals come from. It's just fascinating. It feels more like real life.
Yeah.
You know?
And you can taste it in the beef, man. These cows live good lives. They're not super buff, bulked up steroid cows. I mean, they eat grass before they're processed for meat. They finish on grain. I mean, it's a really natural process for these cows. You know what I mean? And it's not these huge number of cows. Where the cows are sitting cramped in cages, not being able to move and stuff like that. These are cows that live lives, and then they're processed for meat, and it's ethically sourced. And that these heritage cows, that's why the product costs a little more. That's why that's why a single burger is $10, because our cost is higher and the quality is tenfold better. These big kind of conglomerate meat companies are horrible. I mean, it's horrific, the conditions that these animals are kept in. So I was like, ethically, if I'm gonna use that much beef, I have to make sure it's the most ethically sourced product that I can find.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of my ultimate goals is just, I wish I could just manage to cut out my relationship with some of the huge industrial aspects of food in general.
Yeah.
I'd love to. I'm at least starting the habit of regularly having a garden, and I'm increasing how much I'm doing with that. And I would love if at some point I was buying meat and stuff just specifically, exclusively from local sources such as that, because it's a fucking nightmare.
Yeah,
the reality of all that shit. I want to ask you, I hate to change gears so totally, but I want to ask you about tattoos, man. You obviously have quite the variety, the collection on your arms, and I love learning about this art form from different people, just like the different people's perspective on what these things are. So tell me about them.
So I grew up on hardcore, man. I'm a hardcore kid. I think I got my first Machine Head CD when I was like in the 6th grade, and Sepultura. That's what kind of what I grew up on. Then transitioned into Under Oath, and then some like more like New York hardcore as I got older, and that was just part of the culture, man, having tattoos. And I was like a little hesitant at first because I was like, I can't get a job. I don't know what I'm gonna do if I get tattoos. And then once I decided I was gonna be a chef, I was like, people love chefs with tattoos. I mean, people think you can cook better if you have tattoos, so I might as well just do everything all the stuff I want. Yeah. And now I have a neck tattoo, and my mom was like, "Come on, man!" And I'm like, "Hey, look, I'm successful, dude. Like, that's not gonna be the last one." But yeah, a lot of them are dumb, man. Sometimes when I hear people like, "Yeah, this one represents my trip to Italy," with my cousin. I'm like, this one's just a cool looking Snoopy. Yeah. This is a tattoo that Sideshow Bob had on his back, and I was like, that's so sick. And then got Winnie the Pooh coming out of a jar of Duke's mayo.
Oh, hell yeah.
Probably my most meaningful tattoo, because I love Dukes. Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah. But yeah, man, I love the way it looks. Every tattoo. This one's meaningful. My buddy Zach did that on me. It's just like a little buddy tattoo, a little stick and poke. Yeah. But yeah, man, this has been over the course of years, man. So, and I'm going to get many more. Yeah.
Well, I mean, what I love about this style, too, is, and this is something I'm starting. Yeah. I haven't really gotten very far, but I really like this sort of like collection of a bunch of different tattoos and
patchwork. Yeah.
When people do the huge arm pieces, those are beautiful too, and some of the artwork is fucking amazing. But I've never been able to be like, I have one theme that I want my arm to be or anything like that. I've always kind of enjoyed the patchwork stuff and the different variety that people will all of a sudden come out with. Just a whole, it's like a weird little an eclectic shop of tattoos or something on your arm.
Yeah, this is just a roadmap of my mental illness, I feel like.
Yeah, exactly.
Where was that? What was I thinking? What vibe was I going for at this point in time? I love it, man.
What was your first one?
My first tattoo was this little anchor. Everybody was getting anchor tattoos back in the day, and my grandpa was in the service, and he had an anchor tattoo, and I was like, I'm gonna pay homage to him and get an anchor tattoo. But yeah, 16 years old, my mom had to sign off on it. It was in Virginia, where you can get a tattoo at 16 if your parents sign off. She was crying in the corner the entire time, and I was like, yeah. I was like, dude, anchors are pop punk. I'm gonna get me an anchor right there, and I did it, man. And I didn't get another tattoo for a while. This one ain't finished. The tattoo artist that I was going to literally died in between sessions. So
wow.
And he was a really great tattoo artist. So I've just never gotten it finished, but I'm getting around to it. Another really stupid one. I don't know if the camera could see that. I like Mario Kart a lot. and I always pick Shy Guy on a Motorcycle.
Yeah.
And my drunk thought was to tell my tattoo artist I want Shy Guy on a Motorcycle, and he was like, "Fuck yeah, dude!" So I got it. But yeah, I love him, man. Like I said, it's, the story of where I was at the time, and next time you see me, I'll probably have a lot more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, much like sort of part of the mantra that you've been expressing throughout the conversation, tattoos are so outward. They're so like unapologetic.
Yeah.
They're so just, especially nowadays. My dad often bitches about like, because my dad's covered in tattoos, and he's like from an era where he's like, you had to be really cool and really rugged to get tattoos.
I am cool and rugged.
Exactly. Of the two of us, you're the coolest and ruggedest. But
I'm not cool.
I think he opines the time when not, your average person really didn't have tattoos.
Yeah.
But nowadays, especially, like there's so much more of a common expression of just like unapologetic being yourself, which I think matches your person quite a lot. And again, I think I might have asked you some variation of this prior, but like when that's just not a skill everyone has from the start, like when did you start to feel, or how, or something like this relationship you have with being unapologetically yourself? Like, have you ever traced that back? Do you know where that was born?
Yeah, man. We weren't poor, but we were very lower middle class growing up. And I like to say, like, my elementary school years, I had big smelly kid energy. I was nerdy, had the curly shoelaces, was a Yu-Gi-Oh kid, sat by myself on the playground, and I had a lot of time to kind of express myself. I would draw Zelda characters and just kind of express myself. And, school in the South, you kind of have to fit into this one category. And I tried that for a little while in middle school. I was like, oh, maybe I'll play soccer. Maybe I'll. And then I got into hardcore, and that was all about being loud, unapologetic, being yourself. What brings you together is this loud, aggressive music where you can kind of get your aggression out. And I think my musical tastes are what allowed me to realize that, I can be expressive. I remember skinny jeans. Now it's no one gives a shit. But when I first started wearing skinny jeans, you had to go to PacSun. You had to go to the girls section. You had to get you some size 00 or size 2 girls jeans. I remember the first time I wore skinny jeans to school with my little Under Oath hoodie. I was walking up, I was so scared. And people were just like, oh, what the hell? And I was like, yeah, but we were. So now when I see hardcore kids or something wearing skinny jeans, I'm like, you don't know the struggle we went through, what the names, the slurs we got called. But it's like, yeah, man, it's all about expression. I had long hair, I skated and stuff like that. And, as I've gotten older, I've really kind of gotten my unique style. Cause it's like, I'm not pigeonholed in this one thing. Like, I love hardcore. I'm also kind of a deadhead. I also love country music. I love rap, so I think my style reflects that, a lot of the clothes I wear a lot of the things people associate with me, like my overalls and stuff like that, I wear them for utility. I can just wear a band shirt and no underwear and some fucking overalls and stuff my pins and all my paper into my overalls, man. It's like, but now I don't give a shit, dude.
Yeah.
I'm going to do myself. If I feel cool. Maybe I look cool to other people, but it's all about how I feel at this point.
I love that music was a part of that story, and that was a doorway for you to find that power or something. Because that was really, it sounds like what you're talking about. It's like, I remember the awkward years of being younger and sort of being like unsure, and music does sometimes, it provides you with this like identity or something that you're able to kind of be like, hey, there's other people out there that feel like I do or something. And that kind of ties you down to the world, makes you feel a little less chaotic and crazy. So that's pretty cool. And that was that, well, you told me before you went to Mount Tabor, right? Yeah,
I went to Tabor. I honestly, my parents, we were living out kind of in this area out in Germantown, in a really small house. And, my parents saved up. My parents, very young parents. They saved up, bought an old farmhouse on Polo, which is the burbs. Started fixing it up, and I went to school with a bunch of rich kids. I was always the poorest kid in the rich kid school, but I grew up there. I went to Jefferson, then I went to Tabor, and made some really good friends. But again, that is the burbs. Mm-hmm. You've got to fit. If they can't label you or they can't peg you down, they're confused by you.
Yeah, especially there. Yeah. So
absolutely.
is that where you're talking about where you walked in with the skinny jeans and everything?
Yeah, and I had friends that also skated and also listened to hardcore. I mean, the friends that got me into it, and it's kind of weird. At my school, we weren't like the weird kids, like the kids that were into hardcore. I mean, there was like really preppy kids being like, yeah, when's your band playing? You know what I mean? So I never had that like high school, like big football experience. Like the cool kids at like Jefferson and Tabor were like the kids that listened to like Sublime and like The Dead and stuff like that. I think it's maybe the proximity to Wake, but like the more kind of like hippie-ish you were, the cooler you were. So
Interesting.
they were a lot more accepting. Yeah, we didn't have, it wasn't like, you go out to Reagan, you got to be on the football or baseball team. But at Tabor, it was kind of cool, man. I mean, the coolest kids were wearing like hemp necklaces and tie-dye shirts and stuff. So it's a weird. Looking back, it's kind of weird,
Yeah. I went to a Christian high school, so
nice.
we didn't really get to express any of that stuff. The closest I did somehow manage to get away with wearing like a studded belt.
Nice, yeah.
And that was as far as I could push it. You couldn't have weird hair. You couldn't have piercings. I my hair couldn't touch my ears. I had to shave every day. Like,
Yeah.
it was all forms of individuality were kind of suppressed there. So I did manage to have the studded belt. That was kind of as far as I could take it. I probably would have been right there with you, though, in that crowd at Mount Tabor. I wouldn't have been at Mount Tabor, probably. I would have been at Mount Tabor part of the time, I guess. But I grew up part of the time in Winston and part of the time in King, so I probably would have gone to West Oaks High School if I was in the school system at the time.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, man, that's, growing up, part of my family was, Southern Baptist. And then part of my family was, like my mom's side of the family was Jewish. So I had this like kind of dichotomy of, but I mostly grew up, in that Southern Baptist kind of, clean shaven, like tuck your shirt into your pants kind of upbringing. And, it was my Southern family that really gave me they were the judgiest, I think, about, my style choices and stuff like that. And, I mean, it's even some of my uncles up in the Blue Ridge, they're like the snake handler was like that, like that.
Really?
Yeah, man. It's wild.
Legit snake handlers. Mm-hmm. Ooh, that freaks me the fuck out.
Kind of the revivalist. It's wild. Looking back, I was like, man, that's normal. Some people just got that spirit in them. I was like, but now I'm like, that's mental illness right there. That is fucking wild. My grandpa was this real fire and brimstone former preacher. He'd been in Vietnam. He was this very like, probably bipolar guy. But I mean, everything was through the lens of Christianity. You know what I mean? If I was acting out, he'd be like, you got that spirit in you or something. I'm sure you growing up Southern Christian is,
I am aware of that, but so honestly, when people say Southern Baptist, I sometimes think, okay, I think we have different definitions for what that is.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people mean Baptist when they say that, but
Yeah.
what you're describing, I think of as actually Southern Baptist,
Yeah.
like with speaking in tongues and snake handling and fire and brimstone, like that's proper Southern Baptist. So I think you had a more intense experience probably than I did.
And when you're a kid, everything is. When I was a kid, man, heaven and hell were very real to me because like everybody in my family, that was like, there was no veil there. It was like, before you eat, you're thanking God for your food, and I think there was this wave of Christian hardcore, and I was like, I justified my individuality with my spirituality by being like, oh yeah, I'm listening to this crazy music, but these guys are Christian. And then I'd say probably around 15, I became agnostic. I think that around the same time. First, it was realizing the Easter Bunny wasn't real. Then it was realizing for me that Santa wasn't real. And then I kind of, and I wouldn't say I'm an atheist now. I'd say I'm agnostic. I'm like, I don't think I can understand how many planets are in this galaxy alone. I can't understand, what's up there. And I respect people that do. But once I kind of came to that realization myself, I was like, I started to realize how bizarre my upbringing was and how kind of crazy or just kind of messed up it was. But
yeah. Not to say that it's messed up. I don't know anything about it, but I hear you. I was thinking about you, thinking about other people I know, that sometimes it seems like there's a byproduct of like when you come from an environment like that that sort of squeezes on individuality that way, tries to kind of imprison it.
Yeah.
I've noticed that for a lot of people, it kind of brings out this huge personality when you really finally do become yourself.
Yeah.
And I mean, frankly, for some people I've known, it's weird, man. It's almost like the more oppressive, which is not to suggest that all religions are oppressive necessarily, or that they're on a spectrum of oppression. But for some people, like, yeah, they do have really oppressive upbringings. I remember a kid that used to hang at the coffee shop that I grew up at, and he just, he came from a different denomination altogether, like a different branch of Christianity, not Southern Baptist, you know. He was whatever. He was a Jehovah's Witness.
Okay.
And,
Yeah.
you know, they do have a reputation for being a different kind of way.
Yeah.
And in his circumstances, just because of his parents, you know, I've known some Jehovah's Witnesses that were like pretty okay people. I think that I still sensed the intensity of their religion through their personality.
Yeah.
But his parents, I think, were really confused, and they raised him in a way that produced, I think, like a really, really sick person.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
It's like unfortunate how sick he became, I think, from that oppression. Whereas with other people who come from, I know people who've come from like Christian cults. I know people who've come from really abusive backgrounds. A lot of those people become sort of leftist activists and like kind of countercultural artists, and you know, like they just become these really big personalities that are just like, it kind of exactly what you're talking about. Like their form of expression becomes almost a protest, like saying, "I'm happy to be myself."
Yeah.
Finally, or something.
And I think the reason that I was allowed to do that is because I think my mom came out of that very kind of like regressive upbringing, and she just became like a hippie. You know what I mean? So I saw the juxtaposition between like her family and how she kind of, you know, she was the only person in the family that left Danville. You know, that left. You know, if you know anything about Danville, that is a tough town.
I think of Danville as like Moonshine Town.
Yeah, it's last capital of the Confederacy, man. I mean, it's racist. I love Danville, don't get me wrong, but it's got a troubled history, and they're doing some great things there now. They're opening breweries, they're opening restaurants, they're trying to revitalize it. But when I was growing up there, it was the kind of place it was deep country, and I applaud my mom for getting out of there at a young age and, you know, taking us to Winston. You know, Winston was the big city. We're like, wow, we're going to Winston. You might as well tell me I was moving to New York City when we moved to Winston. But yeah, man, she was the person that I credit with like teaching me how to express myself, you know, because I had her telling me, yeah, like, be yourself. It's okay to be this way. And then I had my grandpa being like, you better not be gay or some stuff like that. And I knew it. I think I even knew at the time. I was like, that's not right, man. Like, that's not. I think people should be able to do whatever they want, man, you know? And so, yeah, it definitely took some unlearning. It took some unraveling. It took some, like, introspective thought to break free of that. But now I look back at it and I'm like, man, that's just the way they were raised. You know, they didn't know any better. They probably never really focused on original thoughts or anything like that. You know, they were just trying to live the way that their parents had told them to live if they wanted to go to this big place in the sky. So, and I think some of the best people I ever met was through the lens of Christianity. I think some people really believe it and they try to do good. And I mean, they're empathetic, good intentioned people. And, so I think if it works for you, man, I respect it. You know, I'll never knock somebody for the religion. Like I said, I'm not an atheist. I'm agnostic. I think I think I'm too dumb to understand the scope of the universe, or how it got here. But, yeah, man, I'll never judge somebody for their decisions. You know, I've made my own personal decisions, and with religion, I always think that's on you, man. You know, I even if I was a Christian now, I don't think I'd be involved in like a big church or something like that. I think the way I interpret it is like, you know, have a personal relationship with God, or, but I was very much raised in the church. Like, you know, people would jump up and do the shama lama lama, you know, and then someone else would jump up and be like, this is what he's saying. And I'm like, oh, that's bullshit, man. That's not what he's saying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I went, when I was like mid-20s, I went into atheism, which for me just meant just meant reject all religion,
Yeah,
like
yeah.
don't be religious.
Sure.
And that was what I did. And since then, I have no label that I identify with truly. Like I'm not a religious person. I tell people for all intents and purposes, atheists could call me an atheist, but I'm not anti-religion anymore, and I understand it in a totally different way than I did coming up. But I did go pretty hard in the other way, and that was my way of kind of getting free, I guess, or to feel as though I had ownership of what it was that I believed, because that was what it was. I resented feeling like I didn't have full ownership of what I believed, or that there was a familial expectation for me to sort of have a certain identity or be a certain way in order for me to be acceptable or for me to be part of the club.
Yeah.
And I couldn't do that. I was like, no, I'm not gonna live with this pressure my whole life to live in this little sort of box of expectation.
Absolutely.
So, shit, you would just, I keep running myself off the rails.
We took a 180. Yeah.
I was going to ask you about if you witnessed a snake handling. I want to know.
That was no. So my grandpa was more straightforward Southern Baptist, and that was kind of his fringe parts of his family. Like some of his cousins, they were maybe spent too much time up in the mountains. You know what I mean? Just to being too isolated, and spoke to God a little bit too much. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But no, I never got to witness it. But they'd come over and they'd talk God. My great grandma would blast Jerry Falwell and gospel, and
oh yeah,
it was looking back, that was hateful stuff. But
he said some rough shit, that dude.
Yeah, but I mean that was their favorite. You know what I mean? That's Virginia, man. And yeah, it's just, she couldn't hear barely, so she'd turn it up all the way on her surround sound. So I mean, it sounded like what I imagine like the Branch Davidian compound sounded like, just fucking religious shit announced, like just on full blast at all times, man. So I think that did something to my psyche at the time to be like, this is weird. This is weird. Yeah, I mean, it was a wild upbringing, man. Again, normal at the time. Move forward, become your own self. Start thinking introspectively. You look back, you're like, wow, that was weird.
I was actually thinking of asking you, and I didn't really know why I would or if it would come up organically, and I think it has. Like, one of the things that, like, I mean, when you look at Heff's from the outside, one of the things you notice is the big flag in the window.
Yeah.
And it sounds like, and you can just put it in your own words, but it sounds like that was important for you to, like, put that out there.
Yeah. So it goes back to what I was saying is, the fine food, no fuss label. And I think some places have like a clientele they try to cater to. We want to always spread the message, all are welcome. Everyone's welcome. And we don't super talk politics, but it's pretty apparent we're all pretty left-leaning. I wouldn't even call us Democrats. I would say we're pretty radical leftists, a lot of us. We believe everything for everyone, It's kind of my saying. But again, I'm too dumb to talk politics, but I believe in what I believe. I think our bathrooms are gender neutral, and it's so funny watching a construction worker come in and go, and be like, what bathroom am I supposed to use? I'm like, dude, I don't know, man. It's for pooping and peeing. Just go do your business, man. But yeah, we're unapologetic about it, and people are just like, all right, no one's complained about it.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I hung that up day one. I was like, this is who we are.
Yeah.
If you don't like it, fuck off.
Yeah, man. Yeah. I mean, I don't really talk a lot of politics either.
Yeah.
It's not a whatever. I just don't for whatever, for no reason really.
Yeah.
And I don't even know if I consider that part of a political discussion, but it just seemed like it was. You can tell from looking at the building that it seemed like important to you to,
absolutely,
like express, again, just stand in who you are and what you do and all that. And it's like right there in the front presentation of Heff's. And yeah, so I just wanted to hear exactly that. I wanted to hear why that mattered to you.
I think especially in the South, it's a little scary to, I mean, even now in 2023, it's a little scary to express yourself and know, hey, where's a safe space for me? Where's this place where I can be myself, where I can feel safe? You know what I mean? And we just wanted to put that sign up there. It's like, hey, you're safe here. We're all a bunch of weirdo punks back here. We accept you. Come in, doing you, and we'll accept you, man. And it's scary out there. So we want it to be a sanctuary, a haven for anybody. I don't care if you're wearing a cowboy hat and cowboy boots and you just came from a rodeo, man. We'll feed you. I don't care if you live in a different kind of lifestyle. Come in, we'll feed you. We always want to be inclusive to everybody. So
I love it.
Yeah.
Well, so let's go back in time for a quick minute.
Sure.
I wanted to ask you about. So you were telling me that part of your history as a chef. Actually, you mentioned this when we first started talking. You talked about your thing at Cranky's. So I wonder if you could just talk a little about what you did at Cranky's, like when you got there and what you did and all that shit.
Yeah, so I was coming off. I'd worked with my really good friend JP on the Burger Supreme truck. Worked on that food truck, drove it around, which is hilarious. I'm a terrible driver. I backed that thing into fire hydrants and. Yeah, no, that's why I'll never have a food truck. I can't drive worth a shit. But yeah, man, working on that food truck, it was kind of transitioning more into they were going to be more based in Brooklyn, and I have a kid who's my main priority, and so I was like, man, I got to find something around here. And my partner, there was a chef at Cranky's at the time that was a regular at Hoots where my partner worked, and she just started talking to him, and she was like, "Hey, if you need a really good line cooker or someone that really knows food, this is my partner." And I met him, started working there as a line cook. A month in, became the sous chef. Worked under him for a couple of months until he decided it wasn't for him anymore. And then the ownership there, they were like, "Hey, we like your ideas, we like your drive. We're gonna make you the head chef." And my first kind of act there was to take the menu, because the menu had always kind of frustrated me. It was all over the place, and I looked and I was like, what's the most popular thing at Cranky's? It's the chicken biscuit. It's the egg and cheese and the chicken biscuit. Yep. Not a burger, not huevos rancheros. It's the chicken biscuit and the avocado toast. These three things, they tenfold outsell everything else. You know what I mean? And I was like, let's do variations of the chicken biscuit. Let's do like a Nashville hot chicken biscuit. Like, let's make this a biscuit. Let's have 8 signature biscuits. And, we started that menu. It was 8 signature biscuits, an avocado toast, and the breakfast plate, which is like where you pick your eggs, you pick your protein, and you pick either a biscuit or a toast to go with it. And I'm a huge fan of smaller menus. The more focused, this isn't the Cheesecake Factory. When you want a small focused menu so people don't have to think too much, you know what I mean? Menu was a hit. I mean, a hit. Our business, I would say, doubled. And Cranky's has always been popular, so for Cranky's business to double, that's a huge deal. And so I just kept doing that, man, and I think that really laid the groundwork for how Heff's menu is, you know what I mean? Like, very small, focused menu. Each menu item has, it's someone's favorite. Each burger is someone's favorite burger, and they swear by it. And I think that's the perfect way to do a menu. But, I was working at Cranky's, amassed a great crew, and I hate to say it, but I took a lot of them with me when I left. And we just started doing pop-ups. The burger thing came along, and it was scary. It was the scariest leap I've ever taken in my life. Quitting my job, living on severance for 2 months, and that's all the time I had. I had a mortgage, I had a 5-year-old. I had my partner, who was my wife at the time, and it was tough. It was scary. It was terrifying. I had a couple of people who were like, "We'll invest," and I'm like, I still got to renovate a restaurant. My time frame, I've got to be open by August. It's May. So it was actually really bookended. I was talking to Jason Thiel from the Downtown Winston-Salem Partnership. He was just giving me some guidance. And he was like, "Hey, I know you used to work at the Honey Pot. That building is, Mystic Ginger, that they want out. They're trying to go back to Florida or something like that." And he's like, "No one knows this yet, but that building's about to be up for rent." And I was like, that building is perfect. I'd looked at a couple other spots, but I mean, if you know Winston, if you're in the food scene, 4th Street and Trade Street, that's where the money is. Mm-hmm. That's where the foot traffic is. I was like, that is the perfect spot. I was like, I'll do anything. So some of my friends kind of knew the owners, so we set up a meeting with them, and they're this lovely, lovely older Iranian couple. Very business oriented though. And they had kind of a bigger developer offering them, people who had the money at the moment, but they took a chance on us. They were like, "You know what? we really like you. We want someone local to own this. And we got the keys, I think June 1st. And then we had 2 months, literally 2 months to do all the renovation. And none of it was done professionally. The floors were done professionally, but we did all the painting. We were knocking walls down, replastering walls, painting, hanging up art, moving in all the equipment by ourselves, buying equipment from this old country guy out in Randleman. We weren't getting it from Eastern. We weren't buying new equipment. We were buying this lightly used equipment. So we were like, whatever it takes to open, you know. So we were balling on a budget, man. Most restaurants take I think the minimum is like $250,000. We opened for like $80,000, and sanded down the tables ourselves. Found old bases from salvage. Found those. My favorite thing in the restaurant is our chairs, because I always wanted those old school plastic school chairs, and they're like $90 brand new a piece. And I was like, damn, dude, that's non-negotiable for me. I have to have those chairs. I have to have a bunch of different colored chairs. So surfing Craigslist, surfing Facebook Market. There was this guy who had thousands of them out in Greensboro. But he was like, you got to come move them yourself. You got to pick out the ones. And I needed like 60 chairs. So I spent all day there moving furniture, knocking the cobwebs off these chairs. And I got, moving them ourselves, taking the truck, filling them up, taking it back to Heff's, bringing the truck, taking it back, so everything we did ourselves, man. And I think that's why it's so uniquely us, man. We didn't have the resources to pay people to do stuff,
Yeah,
so,
absolutely.
Yeah.
But that's the way to do it, man. I mean, you can see, like, it's kind of like Camino, like Cranky's, especially how Cranky started out. You can see the individual touch of it all.
Yeah.
Like, you can see that craftsmanship or that grit, kind of went into making this dream come true.
Go look at the ceiling next time. There's places where we messed up. You know what I mean? It's like, we love it. I'm not gonna get up there. It's a 30-foot ceiling. You know what I mean?
Did you? I don't know. Did you buy the building? Is that what you said?
No, we rent
Gotcha,
it. I'd
okay.
love to buy the building at some point, but we're renting now. I feel really good. I'm so glad we're not renting it from some like leasing agency, because I like to know the person. Like, I know they come in and eat. Mina, one of the owners, she likes all my Instagram stories. I mean, I feel like these are real people, real local people that I'm renting from, and it just feels good. It feels right,
Yeah.
But yeah, just renting for now. I mean, it was a great price for 4th Street, what we're paying. I mean, there's restaurants that are $11,000-$15,000 a month, and we're way under that. So we got very lucky, and it's a wonderful spot.
I'm gonna have to come back to Heff's like next week, I think.
Yeah, come through, man, for sure.
My God, you're just thinking about it, man. It's making me crave it. Yeah, man. Well, I love a story of just like a bold move into entrepreneurship. So I'd take it that it's been a reward. I take it that you're glad that you took the risk of what you've just described.
We used almost every dollar that we had before opening day. I had enough for payroll, and I was like, man, we got to make money. I was like, we got to make money so I can make the next payroll, so I can pay our bills. I had everything paid up. I had like $5,000 left in my account. I'm like, we gotta make it. And we exploded. We have not had a red month yet. I mean, we've been in the black every month. And I think that's because we're so frugal. We ball on a budget, man. We spend money where we need to, like on our products and stuff like that. But like everything, a lot of the stuff is like thrifted, older, vintage stuff. We don't spend a lot of money on anything. Instead of getting some big $3,000 intercom system, we have a little megaphone from Home Depot. It's obnoxious.
Yeah.
It's loud. Whenever we call someone's name, they're like, yeah, that's it. Yeah, come get your food. But yeah, man, we love it. We spend money where we need to spend money, and we, otherwise we're frugal. And the most important thing is we pay our employees well. If you ever look at Heff's, it's the same staff we've had since day one, and it's like nine people. And it's like, because I keep a small staff, I'm able to pay them really well. And that was always the most important thing. Like, I think every food service worker deserves. I think everyone deserves a living wage.
Yeah.
I think the term living wage is crazy because it implies that there's an alternative to a living wage. That's insane to me. But I want my employees to be able to. The most rewarding thing for me was when I saw like my employees like buying a car that wasn't breaking down, you know, after their first or second paycheck. I'm like, this is what I wanted, man. You know,
I love that.
and it was crazy, dude. I didn't expect to get any like culinary notoriety, but I mean, we started getting write-ups. I started being on the news, and then the biggest thing that happened to us was the James Beard nomination. If you know anything about the James Beard Foundation, that is like winning an Oscar. And it just didn't just a nomination. We ended as semi-finalists, but we gained national recognition. Every big chef was looking at that list.
Well, so man, I'm not familiar actually because it's not my world. I'm not familiar with the award that you just told me about. So, like, yeah, enlighten me.
So the James Beard Foundation was James Beard and Julia Childs.
Oh yeah, I know this name.
Yeah, Bon appetit, Julia Childs. I pride myself on my Julia Childs. Today we're making a roast chicken. I pride because I grew up watching it. It just always sounded like she had like a cotton ball in her mouth, but I loved it, man. That's the most comforting voice in the world to me. But so they created this foundation, I think, in his honor, and it was to highlight great food all around America. The Michelin stars, if they're in America, it's in these very big cities. So I think the South has the richest food culture in the country, but you can't win a Michelin star down here. So it's so I think the James Beard Foundation for us Southern chefs, I mean, that's the biggest. That's the Oscars. I mean, that is an honor. Just to be nominated, getting a nomination is like getting the Medal of Honor in our industry. But they don't really tell you that you're even up for the award. They don't tell you when you've been nominated. You just got to look at the post. You know what I mean? So I remember the time, I don't want to be crass, but I was sitting on the toilet in the morning, and my friend Nikki, Nick Snacks on, she's a huge, wonderful food writer. She's wrote for Food and Wine. She sent me a message. She was like, "Congratulations, chef." I was like, "Thank you, but what are you talking about?" And then she sent me the best new restaurant semifinalist, and I started shooting snot and tears out of my nose, and I screamed. And my kid got scared. He was like, "What's wrong with Daddy?" My partner came in, and she was like, "What's wrong?" And then got off the toilet first, and then just most surreal moment of my life. I mean, that was like a life goal, was to get nominated. I didn't give a shit if I won. I was like, there it is. I knew every chef in the country was looking at that list, saying, "Who's Heff's Burger Club?" We were next to Nang Juniors, which I'm going to give them props. I hope they win Best New Restaurant. They're this amazing Filipino kind of East Asian cuisine restaurant up in Asheville, and they made the list too. And now they're finalists, and I'm like, oh, come on, let's do it. North Carolina. But yeah, I made the list, man, and immediately the news stations were reaching out to us. We had huge culinary companies reaching out to us wanting to sponsor us. It was insane. Our business doubled overnight. We were already making, we were making ends meet, but I mean, our business doubled. Damn. We started doing brunches we could barely keep up with. We had to get an auxiliary freezer for upstairs just so we could store our buns. I mean, we started ordering 400 or 500 pounds of beef at a time twice a week.
Damn.
Yeah. I mean, it was, and that's mellowed out a little bit, but we're still way busier than we were when we first started. And we started getting this huge amount of recognition, and our following, we gained 1,000 followers in 2 days from that, and it was just surreal. And so I think we all started, and what's cool is now my cooks, if they ever want to work in another kitchen, they can say, "I worked for a James Beard nominated kitchen." And so their value, their social currency has gone up. You know what I mean? So I love it. It was great for all of us. Once everything's said and done and they pick a winner, they're going to send us a plaque that I'm going to put right by the door. It says, we were a James Beard semifinalist for Best New Restaurant in America.
That's so cool.
Yeah. That's the highest accolade you can get, But I think actually the best award I ever got, I think the one that means the most to me, my friend Eric Ware, I don't know if you know him, owns Hoots.
I do.
There was a chili competition between the breweries. They had never won. And it was so important to him. I could see he was down when we, and he was like, "Hey man, you want to come help us do the chili competition?" And I was like, "We're gonna make the best fucking chili ever." I did this smoked venison chili using my grandpa's recipe, which I love North Carolina. I think Virginia's got a little better at cooking. But I was like, man, we're gonna make my grandpa's chili, but we're gonna switch it up. We're gonna do this smoked venison. Smoked the competition. And you see, it's funny, you see this picture of me and Eric doesn't smile much, but he's cheesing in this picture, man, because he finally got this huge trophy that he gets to keep at Hoots for a year. And that's the one that meant the most to me, because it's like, this is what community is about. You know, and it's like helping your friends. It's doing something cool for your community. And that's the one I'm the most proud of. But the James Beard nomination was momentous for us. It really cemented us, and it was like, I can make this work for 5 years now, you know?
Something I'm astonished by with this sort of space to meet local people and talk about achievements is stuff like that. Stuff that, hey, Marb.
Hey, sweetie.
Marble.
Sweetie.
Marble. Hey, girl. Chill. Come here. She was definitely excited. She was kind of cooped up while we were before we got here. So she's actually being great right now. Lay down, babe, or don't. It's been a blessing to sit down with people, because I didn't realize this, and like getting to really grasp your context and the context of that award or that nomination is just so cool. Like I've had a few guests in here that once they sit down and tell me the complexity of their story, I'm blown away that I'm like sitting with this person. Yeah. 'Cause I'm just like, holy shit, like it's amazing. It's so fortunate that our community has this.
Yeah.
And I guess like that's what this kind of reveals is like Heff's is not just a convenient, it is indeed a convenient burger and a well-made burger that you can get in your community, but there's so much more artisan sort of experience in the whole overall sort of story. And you just kind of illuminated that, which is something I appreciate. It's just kind of, I'm really glad to hear that happened for you and that like that milestone in your career took place. That sounds huge.
And just a side note, I want to give a huge shout out to the other James Beard nominees from Winston, Stephanie and Vivian from Sweet Potatoes 2 years in a row. Some of them, I mean, they've had Sweet Potatoes running for 20-something years. They are some of the most talented chefs and most expressive chefs in the area. Peyton from Mission Pizza last year nominated. My good friend Kevin over at Machete, all those people over there nominated last year for the same award, Best New Restaurant. So there's some huge talent in our area that has also gotten recognition, and that's how you grow our city.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? We're not New York City, but we'll outcook you, you know? So.
Yeah, I mean, what are obviously you can't pick all of your favorites there. You don't want to leave anybody out, but are there other restaurants you can name? Maybe those being some of them that are just like, I guess if you were going to put together maybe I'll put a barrier around here so that if you happen to pick some favorites, it's my fault more so than yours. But if somebody was coming into town and you were going to maybe give them an assortment of, let's say, 5 restaurants that you thought really captured a cool spirit about Winston, let's assume Heff's is the 6th one.
Okay.
And we want 5 more.
Let's do 5. Most of them aren't going to be restaurants. They're going to be pop-ups.
Okay.
Number 1 for me, my friend Chris Brown, he does Adiamo. I think he's one of the most talented chefs I've ever seen in my life. My friend Joe Olson, he was on here, Cuba Bear Food. I had really never had lumpia before him, and I'm like, this is some of the most bomb-ass food I've ever had in my life.
He's really good.
Works for me, Regina Bertram, she owns Elderflower Baking Company. The ideas, she'll take a chocolate chip cookie and infuse it with like Earl Grey. I'm like, this is brilliant. I'm a shit baker, so watching her do stuff like that is insane. Eats by Ade. He's like working on his doctorates, and he's just making this amazing food on the side and doing these amazing curated dinners. My friend JP with Burger Supreme, the biggest hustler I know. He's from New York. If you ever meet that guy, he is to the point. He says what he means, but I mean, he's about his business, and that's the guy that really taught me, like, hey man, make your moves. God, it's five sucks.
Or name as many as you want.
Yeah,
Who cares?
I'm gonna have to, man. Machete, I think that is the best food or the best fine dining food or high concept food in the state. They're doing stuff that they're not doing in Brooklyn. You know what I mean? They're doing stuff that's like cutting edge. Let me think. Who else is doing cool stuff? I don't want to miss anybody. One of the chefs from Machete, Chris, is doing a new pop-up called Mondo's Sandwich, which is like, again, kind of like us, like fast casual, but it's like elevated sandwiches, and I can't wait to see where he goes. Bootleg ramen was killer.
Mm-hmm. Did that stop?
I don't know if they're still doing it, but I think it comes and goes, but it was good food.
Yeah.
They did these okonomiyaki waffles, which is like kind of like this like cabbage pancake waffle. Insane stuff, something I'd never think of, but so cool to see all these unique voices. Brittany McGee over at Humblebee, that's a legacy right there. She's killing it. Yeah, there's a lot of people.
These pop-ups, like, where do they typically happen?
A lot of places, and sometimes they'll pop up at like Cobblestone. They'll pop up at they were popping up at bars and stuff like that, but in the health department, they're fuckers, are cracking down on that kind of stuff. So a lot of them are transitioning. Like Joe is transitioning into a different kind of format. I don't know if I'm supposed to say, but he's transitioning into a different kind of format where it's more above board. Some of these people are doing private dinners. And one thing Heff's does is once a month, on a Tuesday, we're closed Tuesdays. So like the third Tuesday of every month, we host a pop-up. So complete kitchen takeover, chef takeover. You come in, we'll buy your ingredients for you. You come in, you prep, and you do a night. We've done Joe. We're doing Mondo Tuesday. We brought in my good friends from Chicago, Birria Tata Tacos. I mean, these events sell out, dude. Like,
that's super fucking cool.
Yeah, it's like, oh wait, I can go to the burger shop and I can get lumpia, like badass lumpia. I mean, lines to the door, dude. I mean, it's awesome. It reminds me of when I was doing pop-ups, But yeah, man, we're always going to be, I do not believe in competition. I believe in collaboration, and I believe in lifting other people up. You know what I mean? So I'm like, anything we can do to facilitate growth for our fellow cooks and our fellow industry people. Hell yeah, dude.
Yeah, I love that.
Because I want more good places to eat. You know what I mean? I want to see you open up a ramen spot or a Korean barbecue spot or a lumpia spot down the street so I can get drunk and go fucking eat there. You know what I mean? Like, that's what I want, man. So, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. That's fucking badass, man. Yeah. I'm well, you've answered all of my food questions.
Yeah,
I know this much.
Absolutely.
And well, we're pretty good on time. I wonder if there was anything. that we skipped over so far in the conversation that we should have spent more time on.
I think my big message, and what I always say on podcasts, is like, I'm 31 years old. I'm good at what I do, but I'm a goofy dumb guy, and I relentlessly pursued what I'm doing. And I want to say to anybody who's like in their 20s, early 20s, and they have ambition in this industry, pursue it. Don't, take that leap. I wasn't really financially in a position where I should have taken that leap, but I did. I pursued it relentlessly, and I want to be an example of you can do it. You know what I mean? Like, you can really do it. You don't have to be these rich old dudes that own restaurants. You can do it, and that's always been like, opening the restaurant, I was like, dude, I want to inspire some of my friends who are equally, if not more talented than me, to do these things. You know what I mean? Because you can tell the measure of a good city by the music scene and the food scene. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? It's a cool city if it's got both of those, so. We
need to get that message out more, I think.
Yeah, you know what I mean? Like, we need more venues in this town, man. What the hell?
We really fucking do.
Man, yeah, because I remember the Hut. I remember like all these cool places, Elliot's Review. I remember having places to play shows, man.
Well, there's an economic problem that we have. I don't know what the answer is to that. I was just talking to Andy about it this week. I played at Gas Hill.
Yeah.
What's today? Friday? I played there 2 nights ago, and got to spend some time with Andy talking about exactly that, like what the fuck has happened. And it's not just Winston. It's a lot of places where the music scene has suffered, but music scene has suffered, man. It's our economy isn't really supporting it, and I think there's a lot of factors there. But I think you're exactly right. I mean, that's what I think makes a city feel like a community is food and music, man.
Yeah.
It's two really important things.
Absolutely. And there's this, some of my cooks, my younger cooks, Gabe, Ben, all them, they're in these Gen Z kids, man, they're in these like dope ass like garage rock bands, man. I go to their shows and I'm seeing kids again, like going wild.
That's so
like,
good to
packed
hear.
houses. I'm like, dude, that is fucking sick. But they, again, they're having to go to Boone or they're going somewhere else to play. But I mean, they're having these massive, gnarly house shows where you're like, is the floor going to cave in? And I'm like, dude, that is what I miss, man. We need a venue where these kids can play. We got Monstercade, which is dope. Carlos is dope as shit. But we need more places, where you can, people can go see music, you know what I mean? And, but yeah, I believe in the youth, man. These kids are so cool and they're so expressive and they're so genuinely themselves, man. Like they'll wear thrifted corduroy pants from the, if you look at one of my cooks, man, he's got multicolored flowers dyed in his hair. And I'm like, you guys are so fucking cool, dude. Like I love this generation of kids, man. I think they're really going to change the world.
Exactly what you just said is part of my preoccupation for what I'm so worried about with our community, because I'm like, I don't see that the torch is being carried in Winston, and that freaks me out because I'm like, I remember my first show in the garage and like opening for older musicians who were established, and that the importance of being like putting on a good show and afterwards feeling like, holy shit, like I've been accepted by this group. I've been accepted by like Doug Davis and Lee Terry, like these musicians that are wiser than me. Yeah. And, it's a slightly different genre or whatever. So like whatever, it looks different, but just like the importance of being a part of the process of that kind of being carried into the future meant a lot to me as a young musician. And then like I got another pivotal moment for me in Winston was like when I put on this big ass show at Ziggy's. And then like Mike Bennett had my band do a set with him on like the Mike Bennett All-Star thing on Trade Street. Yeah. And that was just like, fuck, like we did something. Like our city is like accepting us as part of the arts community. Like this is very cool. Yeah. And I just don't see space where that's happening for younger musicians now. And I know it's happening somewhere, but I just am not seeing it obviously in Winston as much.
I got a little Winston flex. My dad, my stepdad, was one of the dudes that originally like helped build Ziggy's. He worked there. His name's Brian, but he went by Tracker back then, old Deadhead, and worked with Mark, Celeste, Nose Crow, all them. You know what I mean? So I would get into, Jay, all them. I grew up going to those shows, man. I remember, didn't have a sitter, so I had to go sit with my dad while there was a Gwar show. He was working door. There was a Gwar show inside. I'm sitting there playing Pokemon on my Game Boy, and I see all these people covered in fake blood coming out, and I'm like, I saw the cool. I saw Public Enemy up there. I was like, just the Ziggy's, and I'm like, man, this is, now looking back, I'm like, that's cool, man. That spot was dope, dude. That spot was dope, man. Like, we don't have anything like that anymore, man, and we need it. I know we got the motivation to do it, but man, we need a place where like these young kids who are doing cool shit can like play shows and shit.
Well, I know that, Andy told me this week, and I should put this message out to the world. Like, he said, I want nothing more than for young artists to come to me and say, we have a show we want to do. Yeah. And we'll do it. Like, he's like, we'll turn over Gas Hill or Ramcat if we can. We will fucking do what we can to do shows with young artists. I know that they want that. I know that also there's something about an organic space, maybe like Monstercade, that is alluring because it's more secretive and it's more like a free for all, kind of like what Elliot's used to be or whatever. I used to go see people DJ in there, and it was just there was obviously I guess it's like the size of Ramcat and like the beauty, the cleanliness, like the orderliness of Ramcat probably doesn't speak as much automatically to a more chaotic, youthful punk scene, but nonetheless, I know that Ramcat wants to support that movement. Oh, absolutely. So whatever. If anybody sees this shit and has that idea, pass the word along. Like they're looking for artists to put on a platform.
Gabe.
Yes. The hell, bro.
Yeah. But yeah, man, it's awesome. I think Winston has the potential to be cool. I want Heff's to be a marker. Like, hey, we can do it. You guys do it. You guys are awesome. Like I said, there's a tremendous pool of talent here, whether it be music, whether it be cooking. I mean, look at Joe, man. That's one of the coolest cats in town, man. He's doing his damn thing, you know.
Yeah.
He needs a spot.
Absolutely.
All these people need a spot, and I believe in our wave of people. And it's been the same 5 dudes owning everything in downtown, and it's our turn. It's like fuck off.
Absolutely,
it's our turn. You know what I mean? So, yep, it's starting, man. It's starting. Give us some time, and we'll get it. Shout out to Hells, Allison and Morgan, locals around my age, just opened a new bar. It's cool as shit, man. You know, we've had the same bars. It's either the old bars that have always been there, or some out of town developer opening some themed bar in town. But these are locals working from the ground up, getting in there, getting dirty, just like Heff's, opening their own bar. So I'm seeing it coming together. You know, you got Monstercade, Hells, us. I mean, we're starting to take over. So give it a couple more years. 10 years, you won't recognize this town. I guarantee it.
I love it.
Yeah.
There was one other thing I think I was gonna say. I might have lost it. I probably did by now.
Yeah.
So I won't belabor it. I will let go of whatever that thought was.
Absolutely, brother.
I won't keep us. Thoroughly enjoyed this conversation.
Absolutely.
And just like learning this whole story or
Yeah.
whatever. So I'll leave it there. I want to talk to you after this and pick your brain about a couple things. But
Sure.
man, thank you for your time.
Of course,
Seriously,
brother.
thank
Thank
you
you for
for
having me.
making it up here.
Of course.
And I'll come see you at Heff's soon.
Yeah, I'll feed you, man.
Awesome.
Hell yeah.
All right, man. Thank
All right,
you,
brother.